The results are in and the stage is set for November's general election. Turnout was up from 4 years ago here, and the voters definitely sent some strong messages to the candidates as we head into the November showdowns. We'll break down the winners and losers here in a minute, but first let's find out who's joining us at the table this week. Here with me are attorney Sophie Martin, Rachel Sams, she's editor of Albuquerque Business First, former House Minority Whip Daniel Foley is with us, and Laura Sanchez-Rivey. She's an attorney at Cuddy & McCarthy, LLP. Welcome. Now, women, we're definitely the big winners in this week's primary. The race for the 1st and 2nd congressional districts will feature both female candidates on the ticket, the Republican and Democratic tickets, and current CD1 Representative Michelle Lujan Grisham won her hotly contested gubernatorial primary in a dominant fashion. Sophie, let's start with Ms. Grisham. She faced a pretty withering barrage at the end there about her work and accusations with Delta Consulting. Your sense of something here, did it work? Meaning she didn't lose, but did it give Mr. Pierce something to work with?
It's funny that I've been thinking about this since the primary. We've been looking a lot as a nation over the last couple of years over this idea of sort of confirmation bias. And so my sense is that if you're predisposed to support and like Ms. Lujan Grisham, you're going to dismiss that. You're not going to worry about it quite so much. If you're on the fence or if you're predisposed not to like it, you will probably bang your fist a little bit on the issue. But I think that it's going to wither as a meaningful discussion. The issues over her compensation from her company and things like that, I think it's going to go away. I think that there's a larger discussion that the Democratic Party needs to have in New Mexico about candidates who potentially could damage the others. I think unfortunately we have a situation here in which two candidates who are reasonably well funded, and so I have reason to believe that they would have polling that let them know how far behind they were, decided to go kind of thermonuclear in their races. Right. And it raises questions in my mind about, if you're probably not actually going to get the slot, what are you doing?
That's a good point. Yeah, Dan, 66% of the vote she snagged, Ms. Lujan Grisham. It's not a bad way to go into a general, but your sense of the general now with Mr. Pierce, does she have some natural strengths against him, or does he have some natural strengths against her? And I'm also curious about the legacy of our current governor. Had a whole lot of Democrats vote for her. Can Mr. Pierce expect the same?
No, not at all. It's not even going to be a close race. Michelle's going to win by double digits. I think that this clearly, not that the Lujan Grisham camp is calling me for advice by any means, but if the only thing coming out limping out of the primary is you misstated your finances once in Congress, a quick mea culpa and that's gone. Right. I think being from southern New Mexico, being Anglo, having that West Texas draw, being in the oil and gas business, doesn't play well anywhere other than southeastern New Mexico. He's going to have Steve Pierce going to have Congressman Pierce going to have a good ground game, but Congresswoman Grisham is going to have a good ground game too. Right. I think at the end of the day, I think that the congressman has some negatives that are going to be tough for him to get past. I think a lot of it's going to have to do with the treating of the governor and the email issues. A lot of those folks that were involved in that worked for Steve Pierce, continued to work for Steve Pierce, and are still working for Steve Pierce.
I didn't know that.
So I think that's going to be a problem going forward. I think the fact that, Steve, it's not like it's Steve's first foray to people around New Mexico. People know Steve Pierce.
He ran for Senate.
He ran for Senate.
That's right.
And so I would tell you, I think people, and I know both of them, Congressman Pierce and I sat next to each other on the House floor. Congresswoman Lujan Grisham was a secretary when I was in the legislature. Look, there's no doubt that Michelle is a progressive Democrat. But she doesn't come off that way when you meet her. I mean, she's very personable. I think people in southeastern New Mexico, when they shake her hand, are going to realize she's not as mean as they've heard about.
Double digits. I'm going to go back to that. Double digits. You really think it's a double-digit win?
Yeah. And
seriously,
I think it's going to be a tough go for Republicans. I don't think we have the strength at the top of the ticket. Right now with Pierce running as the nominee, he got in there unabated, which tells you, I mean, no one ran against him, which tells you, that's rare.
Let me kind of swing Rachel in here.
That's true in a number
Right.
of races.
I think
that's true.
The sole Republican.
Yeah, and so I think that it's going to be a tough out. The congressional race down south, I wouldn't write that off yet. I think Yvette Herrell's a good candidate. I think she's going to do a great job. But look, we've had a Democrat had that seat, and Harry Teague was able to take it in similar type of circumstances. I think also you have the other thing that I think Congressman Pierce. In politics, short of doing something major, it's usually death of a thousand cuts.
That's right.
We're going to talk about some legislative races with Rodella.
That's right.
It's death of a thousand cuts. He ran against Heather Wilson. He didn't get along with Susana Martinez. He's backed somebody time in his congressional race. He worked with, from what I understand, Yvette Herrell. At some point, the fractions start growing, and people. That doesn't mean that Michelle's going to get those votes, but that means a lot of those people may walk in and be like, Governor, let's move down, and start voting.
Right.
And so
that could happen.
It could be a huge undervote.
Let me ask, Deb Haaland. Talk about Year of the Woman. This could be very interesting. Now, she doesn't have it yet, but the competition is out there. We'll see what happens. Your sense of that vote. I mean, you think about Damon Martinez and how he was coming on. Do you know what I mean? But she squeaked this one out. Interesting, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was such an interesting swing in how that race progressed in the last couple of weeks.
Right.
Because when the Journal poll came out, it was a pretty close race between three people. And then she pulls away with a 15% lead at the end, like picking up so much of that undecided vote.
That's right.
That shows me that her people were really on the ground pushing hard till the very last
Do you think the
minute.
Pat Davis thing helped her, him dropping out? Because I had said to somebody, if he had dropped out the week before, maybe that would have been better. But it turned out okay, of course, Ms. Ellen. But
I think it probably helped her some, but I do get that sense that just that presence that she'd had in the party around here for a long time. People had seen her, just like kind of like you said with Michelle Lujan Grisham. People had seen her out there, active. People were really familiar with her name, and I think that paid off.
I'm not sure Pat Davis's 2% moved the needle that
Well,
much.
there was also, though, there was a pretty strong Never Damon thing happening
true.
in social media. I think there was some strategic voting there around that candidate.
And it clearly, something worked there, absolutely. Let's fold in another layer here, not just women doing well here, but progressives as well. Your sense of the progressive thing, it's funny I said it that way, but is this a time to celebrate for progressives? Is this a clear sign of advancement? What's your sense of it?
Well, I don't think you can ignore that it was a night for progressives. I'm not sure that, celebrate for one night, but don't assume that you've got it made for November. I think it's good. Every one of these races are important. I think people need to be, of course, the ones where there was no competition, the legislative races, they're in.
Right.
But certainly the federal races are going to be important. And I think the worst thing Democrats can do is just assume that we've got it. I mean, don't listen to Dan, double digits. We need to run like it's, like we're the underdog, because that's when, we really talk to people.
Because you're normally the underdog in New Mexico.
We really need to talk to people, and make sure that that people understand the big difference between the candidates.
That's right. Let's talk about our old colleague, Janice Arnold-Jones. She'll be going up against Ms. Haaland. Janice has done a lot of things around here. She's got name ID, certainly. She's got a track record that people respect. She's known for lots of different things she's done in the legislature. What do you see this race heading?
I think it's going to be a tough race. I really do. I think New Mexico CD1 is very tough in general. There's a lot of independents here, declined to states. And so that's the unknown, right? So you assume that there's going to be Democrats who are just solid Democrats. They're going to come out for Deb Haaland regardless.
Right.
Same with Republicans. And then there's a whole lot of people in the middle that I think that's where the retail politics comes in. And I think we do have very different candidates.
Right.
Janice has experience as a legislator. She's had, she's a businesswoman. She's been around for a long time in the political scene, and she's very savvy, I think, with her messaging.
That's right.
Deb is a relative newcomer. I mean, she's involved with politics with the Democratic Party, but she's never held public office. I think she has a very different personal experience, one that is appealing to a lot of people. And what's interesting in this race is that you don't have the woman factor necessarily, because you have, and I say necessarily because you don't have the woman factor just from male-female, but you do have some issues. I mean, there was a lot of pro-choice women that came out for Deb Haaland. She was endorsed very early on, earlier than others, by NOW and Planned Parenthood and others. And so I think she's got a pro-choice Democratic woman that can appeal to a wide range of people. But I think fiscal issues are also really important. And certainly transparency for government's an important issue in general. And I think that Janice has some good credentials on that front. So
Certainly.
I don't think it's one that we should just assume is going to be a Democrat. I think it's going to be a tough one.
Interesting point. I'm glad you kind of summed it up that way. Because, Sophie, I'm anticipating Deb Haaland having a lot of money come in to help her from outside money.
think,
Because there's an
yes.
excitement to having a new
We're already,
possibility.
it's so interesting to go onto national news sites, the Washington Post, the Daily
Right.
Beast, et cetera, and there's Deb Haaland's
right.
photo is leading in a lot of those venues.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense that her potential election is historic, both for women and for Native Americans. And so, yeah, I think there is going to be a lot of attention here, and I think a fair amount of money will come in. I think this is going to be a real battleground. And so the question will be, will similar funds be coming in for Janice Arnold-Jones?
That's right.
And
That's right.
her story is potentially just less compelling.
Right.
Than Ms. Haaland's is.
Good point there. We'll see how that shapes up. That's interesting. Dan, I want to talk about another issue for women winning and or losing. Ms. Rodella lost in her race, and Susan Herrera actually won. Your sense of it, I mean, Ms. Rodella has been a power figure in the legislature for a long time. You served with her. I mean, it's just, what was your sense of why that turned around? And she had more money than the challenger, a lot more money, and it still didn't work out. What do you think happened there?
So, like we said in the earlier on in the deal, in politics, barring some major, cataclysmic event that you do in your career, it's death by 1,000 cuts. I mean, she's been there 30 plus years. You don't run. She's had opponents many times before. I mean, when you run against somebody and you lose, you normally never come back to that camp. Right? So if you've had 12 opponents in a district like that over the course of your career, you now have 12 factions of people that are for anybody but you.
Yes.
And so eventually that number, you start off winning and, you run your next election and you win, you run your next election and you win, and, pretty soon you wake up one day and you realize there's more on the enemies list than the friends list.
You're upside down. That's right.
So I think, it'll be interesting. I would not surprise me to see her working up there. She'll be a lobbyist. She's worked for many industries. She's going to be somebody that does have the ability to talk to both sides of the aisle. She's also going to have that special chit that I think gets her some stroke in the legislature, which is, I may run again. And so, she's going to have years of name recognition.
Yes.
When you knock off the king, you better be careful that the king doesn't come back, because the next the person who won, the lady that won, she could serve 3 or 4 years or two or three terms, and if she stumbles, someone like Debbie Rodella could pounce with 30 years of name recognition. That doesn't go away overnight.
That's a good point there. Just a quick extra minute there in the booth. I do want to touch on CD2 if we could. It's interesting just watching Yvette Herrell and some of the reaction did you guys catch from the Governor Martinez?
Yes.
I did.
Rachel, what did you make of that? That was very interesting to me. Not exactly a warm, full-throated endorsement.
That was really
Right.
interesting. We have some really well-connected people here at this table, and even in the green room, we were discussing it and all sort of scratching our heads. I don't really know what it means, but I think we're probably going to see some indicators of that play out over the next few weeks.
That's right. Pick up on that if you would. What did you make of that? Of the governor's
Well,
reaction?
I think it's clear that there's different factions. I mean,
Okay.
both parties have different factions.
Sure.
And I think that, it's hard for somebody to come full, sort of dismiss any issues from the past and just fully support a candidate when they make it. That was a tough race. I mean, I think there was a lot of negativity happening on both sides with Monty Newman and her.
That's right.
And so it was a tough one for them. So she comes out. Now it's interesting, speaking of Year of the Woman, again, 2 women. I
right.
think this is historic because we
That's
have
right.
2 women running in CD1 against each other, 2 women running in CD2 against each other.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, we're going to have women in those 2 seats, assuming that the Libertarians don't pick that up, which I think is
A late rally. Yes.
safe assumption. But in that seat down there, I agree with Dan. There's definitely a chance for a pickup there for the Democrats.
Right. It'd be huge if it
Torres
happened.
Small is very well liked in the district. She's very articulate, very good in the retail politics side of it. Yvette Herrell, has been a state legislator, but Monty Newman came out with some very negative ads about her and contracts with the state,
Right.
which doesn't play well, I think, for people in terms of government transparency.
Sure.
And in her district, is in the southeast part of the state, whereas Sochi, I think, definitely traveled broader than just that area because of her work with Udall. So I think it's going to be one to watch, and we're going to see a lot of outside money getting poured
It shows you
I'd
what
agree with
it
that
also
too.
shows you what a difference time makes. 10 years ago, a staff female Hispanic that worked for a Democrat, you would laugh at them running for any race in CD2. You'd be like,
That's right.
you'd be
That's right.
begging
Not
for
gonna
that
happen.
person.
Right.
Let that be the opponent. And now
right.
you're talking about a district that has been very male dominated, very rancher, oil and gas guy kind of.
Yep,
and you
that's
have
right.
2 women running now for Congress. It shows you how that district has changed.
It's amazing. There's lots of other races we couldn't get to in this sitting. We'll do it next week. That's all the time we have for that one. Now, when we come back to the line, we're talking golf, specifically Albuquerque's aggressive incentive plan to bring top golf here to the Metro.